Do y'all know what square rooting is? Have you heard of that before?
Finding the root.
Finding the root is really what that means. Yeah, but do you know what that means? Like,
No.
no? Okay. Do you have something to write down on? Yeah, just getting there. Okay. So let me start you with what does 2 squared mean? Not what does it equal, what does it mean? Or, I'll give you another example. I'll give you a few examples, so that way you can kind of think about this. What does 4 squared mean? What does 10 squared mean? Right? Like, we've seen that before. As a matter of fact, we just used that last week when we did our area formula. Well, we just typed that in the calculator, so we weren't really thinking about it. But do y'all know what? Exactly. So 2 squared means 2 times 2, right? And 4 squared means 4 times itself. 4 times 4. 10 squared means 10 times itself, times 10. Okay, so that's exactly what that means. Today, we're going to talk about, this is called squaring something. Today, we're going to talk about the opposite of squaring. I spelled that wrong. That should be an I. The opposite of squaring something is to do what we call the square root. Okay? We're not going to take a whole lot of notes today, okay? So just stick with me. The opposite of squaring is square rooting. Here's the deal. Here's why my other class periods struggled with this. They're not too good at their multiplication tables. Okay? Are you guys? Are you okay with your multiplication tables? Yeah? Okay. Well, that's really what this comes down to, is because squaring is just an extension of multiplying. 2 squared means 2 times 2. 4 squared means 4 times 4. Okay? Today, the opposite of squaring is what we're talking about, square rooting. Now, let's go back up here and do this. What is 2 times 2? 4. What is 4 times 4? And what is 10 times 10? So what that means is 10 squared is equal to 100. 2 squared gives you 4. 4 squared gives you 16. So these are your, like, I guess you would say answers. 4 is the answer to 2 squared. 16 is the answer to 4 squared. Now, let's do one more. What is 5 squared? Remember, 5 squared means 5 times 5. Well, what is 5 times 5? 25. So 5 squared is 25. Today we're going to do the opposite of that. So the symbol for square root is this little thing right here. This is your square root symbol. So today we're going to start with a number like 25, and we're going to go backwards. 5 squared gives you 25. The square root of 25 gives you 5. Okay? These sentences, these are number sentences right here. They're literally just backwards of each other. I got one pretty long sentence that we're going to write here, and then after that, the rest of it's very short stuff. So, and again, this is what the other class struggled with quite a bit. But I want to first look at what you do without using a calculator. I want to test us a little bit. Without using a calculator, to find a square root, it's not easy. Okay, but what you want to do is you want to ask yourself, what number times itself? Gives you the number you started with. Okay, so once you write that big long sentence down, we're not going to do much more writing, but I do want you to have this in your notes. Without using a calculator, the only way to find a square root is you got to ask yourself this question. What number times itself is going to give me the number that I started with? Okay, so I want you to think about something. Can we add numbers together without using a calculator? We can. We did it back in elementary school. We even did some pretty hard numbers, right? Like you might could add 148 plus 352. Like, you know how to do that. You can do it without a calculator. Obviously, the calculator makes it easier, right? But you can do it without. Can we subtract without a calculator? We can. You learned how to do it. It's way easier with a calculator, but you can do it without. Can you multiply without a calculator? Yeah. You were forced back in the day to remember all your multiplication tables so that you could just know those, but you can even multiply big numbers without a calculator. You can even divide without a calculator. You were supposed to learn that at some point. The thing is, square rooting without a calculator is not easy, okay? Because you just ask yourself this, what number times itself? And that relies on you knowing some multiplication tables, okay? So it's really not easy. So we're going to do a couple examples without a calculator, and then I'm going to show you how much easier it is just to use the calculator. But I want to talk about it without first. So let's do just a couple of examples without. Let's say we wanted to know the square root of 100. Now, the method is, what this means is you ask yourself this question right here. What number times itself will give me 100? And that relies on just kind of guessing and checking on some numbers. Does anybody know what number times itself would give them 100? 10. Now, it helps that we did this one earlier, right, up here, right? But if you didn't do that one, you'd have to think to yourself, okay, let me just guess a random number, 8. Is 8 times 8 100? No. Is 9 times 9 100? No. Is 10 times 10 100? There it is, okay? So, like, this relies on you knowing some multiplication. But the square root of 100 is 10. What this means is 10 times itself gives you this number. Okay, let's do another one without a calculator. Let's say we wanted to do the square root of 64. And so you got to think, what number times itself would give me 64? 8. And you know that because you're pretty good at your multiplication tables, right? 8 times 8 is 64. So that means the square root of 64 is 8. Now, sometimes you might get to a number that's a bit harder. Like, say, the square root of 144. Okay, and so here's where without a calculator it gets kind of tricky. I'm asking myself, what number times itself will give me 144? Let's start with 10. Obviously, 10 times 10 is 100, so we need to go up. How about 11 times 11? It's 121, so let's keep going up. How about 12 times 12? Anybody know that one? 12 times 12? It is 144, okay? So that's where this gets tricky. When you start getting into those bigger numbers that we don't have memorized, because most of us probably memorized up to 11 or 12, that's where it starts getting tricky, okay? But the square root of 144 is 12 because 12 times 12 is 144. Now we're going to look at how to do it in the calculator. It's going to save our brain a little bit of thinking time or thinking pains or whatever, and it's also going to save us some time. So let's look at some more, and these we're going to just go straight to the calculator, let the calculator tell us what to do. So let's say we want to know the square root of 196. So in the calculator, just real quickly, let me show you where this is located. Right here in blue, if you look on your calculator, do you see this button? It is right above the x squared button. Now, real quickly, you know why x squared and the square root are the same button? It's because they're opposites of each other. So if you want to use the square root, it's in blue. You're going to do second, and then that button down there, this should pop up. You're You're going to type in 196. And it gives you the answer. It saves you so much time. So what that means is 14 times itself is 196. Okay, let me give you another one. How about the square root of 400? And it's going to give you 20. Now, it's that easy. Just type it in your calculator. If you know it right off the bat, like if it's a pretty easy one like this up here, maybe don't type it in the calculator. But you start getting to those big numbers, let the calculator do it. All this means is 20 times itself is what gives you 400. Okay. One last thing I want to look at. These numbers right here that I just did, these examples, these are called perfect squares. Because what you get is a number, a whole number without a decimal. Not every number is going to be a perfect square. Okay, let's look at this one. Let's say we want to do the square root of 38. Okay, type that one in your calculator. The square root of 38. Most of the time what happens is you are going to get a decimal number because most numbers are not perfect squares. What this means is there isn't a whole number that's going to give you 38. Think about it. What's 6 times 6? 36. If I go up to 7, what's 7 times 7? 49. I have missed 38. So a lot of numbers are going to be some decimal number. If this happens, let's just keep rounding to the second decimal place. So should this 6 stay a 6 or go up? Stay a 6 because of that 4. So this is approximately 6.16. A lot of times you are going to get a decimal number. Okay, let's do another one. How about the square root of 12.25? You can also take the square root of a decimal number. It's most likely going to give you a decimal number. .5. What that means is 3.5 times 3.5 is 12.25. If you don't believe your calculator, which would be crazy, but I actually had somebody this morning who did not believe their calculator. If you don't believe your calculator, type it in the other way. 3.5 times itself should give you 12.25, and it does. All right, let me give you just a few here that I want you to type in. I just want you to practice typing in a few, and this is going to be it, okay? Okay, so let's do the square root of 48. The square root of 10,000. The square root of 105. And 49. Okay, so just do those real quick. Type those in. We'll talk about what our answers are, and that's going to be it. Okay, so again, I just want to show you the buttons. Right here is your square root button. So you'll do second and then that button. 48. This is one that's going to give you a decimal. What should the 2 do, you guys? Stay or go up? Go up to a 3. So this is approximately, because I'm rounding, it's approximately 6.93. Now, I didn't even think about showing this morning. If you take this number, 6.93, and you times it by itself, we should get 48, right? You don't get exactly 48. Anybody know why?
Because it's the tens of God.
We rounded it, right? Like we cut all of this other stuff off. We rounded it. So that's why it didn't give us exactly 48. But that's pretty close to 48, right? That's because we rounded it. Okay, on this one, what did you guys get? 100, right? That means 100 times 100 is 10,000. On this one, this is another rounding one, 105. Whoops. Square root of 105. Let's see, on this one, we're going to round this 4 up to a 5. So that'd be about 10.25. And then the last one, what did we get? 7. 7 times 7 is 49. All right, we're going to do this worksheet real quick. I want to show you, it's got 3 parts. Part 1, you're going to answer these 2 questions. We literally wrote this down in our notes. Okay, so if you don't remember the answer, look in your notes. For part 2, all of these are going to be perfect squares. You're not going to get any decimals. You might can do some of those in your head. I don't know. For example, what times itself gives you 4?
4,
No.
1.
No. 2, right? So you could do some of these in your head. If it takes you too long, just type it in the calculator. These down here, a lot of these you're going to get decimals. If you do get a decimal, round it to 2 decimal places, okay? The reason that I needed to do this today, I know this is a very easy lesson and it's mostly using the calculator. Tomorrow's lesson is relying on square roots, so we really need to know what that means, okay? And now we do know what that means.